At 9:47 p.m., Mafia boss Dante Moretti walked into Evelyn Hart's neighborhood laundromat and dropped a blood-soaked black suit across her counter. "Clean it before midnight," he ordered, "and burn anything you find inside." 10 minutes later, detectives stormed the shop with a photograph showing the full-figured owner dragging a wounded man through the rear door. They accused her of helping Dante dispose of a body and gave her until midnight to confess. But Evelyn noticed something impossible. The bullet hole had been cut into the jacket after the blood had already dried. Someone had dressed Dante in evidence from a murder he never committed. Hidden beneath the lining was a tiny brass key, stamped with the name of his supposedly loyal brother. Before Evelyn could warn him, every light in the laundromat went dark. At midnight, Dante returned to find his suit perfectly cleaned, the back door open, and Evelyn gone. 92 minutes earlier, Evelyn Hart was counting quarters beneath the warm fluorescent lights of Hart's Laundry when a black sedan stopped at the curb. The laundromat occupied the ground floor of a narrow brick building in North River, where delivery drivers, nurses, restaurant cooks, and dock hands washed the evidence of honest work from their clothes. Evelyn knew most customers by their stains. Red clay belonged to the construction crews. Bitter coffee marked the diner aprons. Fine gray metal dust came from the machine shop 3 blocks east, at 29. She had spent 7 years turning her late father's failing shop into the one place on Mercer Street where a broken dryer was fixed before anyone could complain. She looked soft until she moved. Her chestnut hair was twisted into a loose knot above a youthful round face, and her cream-wrap blouse followed a naturally full, voluptuous figure with broad hips and a soft waist. She carried a canvas laundry bag as easily as most men carry groceries. But tonight she favored her right wrist after replacing a drive belt alone. It was not injured. A distinction she respected, because machines punished exaggeration. The man who entered was impossible to mistake. Dante Moretti filled the doorway without hurrying, tall and balanced in black trousers and an open-collared white shirt. Black and gray tattoos rose from his upper chest across the front and sides of his neck, then continued over his forearms, hands, and selected fingers. At 33, he had the authority of a man who never needed to announce it. His swept-back black hair was damp from mist, his short beard sharply trimmed, and his stern expression gave away nothing except the tightness in his jaw. Evelyn had met him 3 times. The first was when one of his collectors demanded protection money. She had placed the unpaid invoice on the collector's chest and told him protection that arrived after a threat was simply another name for the threat. The next morning, Dante returned the money, dismissed the collector, and ordered that no Moretti soldier enter her shop armed the second time. He had brought his housekeeper's ruined tablecloth after a careless guest spilled red wine across antique lace. Evelyn saved it without asking whose bloodless war had been fought over dinner. The third time was now. He carried a black suit over one arm. The front was dark with blood. "Lock the door," he said. "I close at 11. Tonight you close now." She held his gaze. "You don't give orders in here. That was our agreement." Something changed behind his eyes. Not softness, exactly, but recognition. He reached back and turned the lock himself. "Then consider it a request with consequences neither of us chose." At 9:47 p.m., he laid the suit across her counter. The blood had soaked the lapels, chest, and right sleeve. There was no matching wound on Dante. His white shirt was clean, though one cuff was torn and a shallow scrape crossed his knuckles. "Whose is it?" Evelyn asked. "I was told Samuel Rusk's." The name carried weight in North River. Samuel mediated disputes between dock unions and the Moretti family, one of the few men trusted by both sides. If he was dead, the fragile truce along the river could collapse before sunrise. Dante's gaze moved to the security camera above the change machine. "Clean it before midnight and burn anything you find inside. Cleaning evidence is a crime. Keeping it is a death sentence. Those are not the only choices. Tonight they may be." He had been handed the suit at a family warehouse, he explained, by his younger brother Matteo. Samuel had vanished after requesting an emergency council meeting. Matteo claimed the suit had been found beside Samuel's abandoned car, along with a witness who said Dante had ordered the mediator killed. At midnight, the Moretti council would hear the accusation. Dante could not enter that room wearing the case against himself, but his pride would not allow him to flee it. Destroying the suit was his first mistake, and Evelyn told him so. "If someone built this lie," she said, "they want you frightened enough to erase their work." His eyes rested on her tired wrist, then on the locked door. "And if I leave it with you, they will come here. They already know you came." For one charged second, neither looked away. Then Dante removed a silver watch and placed it beside the suit. "If I am not back by midnight, call the number engraved inside. Ask for Bianca. Trust no one else with my name." "Why trust me?" "Because you once refused my money when accepting it would have been safer." He left through the front door at 9:52. 5 minutes later, 2 detectives entered with weapons drawn. One held up a photograph of Evelyn dragging a bloodied man through her rear entrance. The image was grainy but convincing. The woman's cream blouse, full silhouette, and chestnut hair were hers. "You have until midnight to tell us where Moretti put the body," Detective Paul Vance said. Evelyn studied the photograph. The rear door light in the image was on, but she had removed that burned-out fixture 4 days ago. Before she could say so, Vance's partner seized her phone and pulled the plug on the shop router. They were not there to investigate. They were there to isolate her. When a siren sounded outside, both men glanced toward the windows. Evelyn used the moment to pull the jacket beneath the counter. Her fingers found the bullet opening. The cut edges were clean and pale, while the blood surrounding them had dried stiff. The hole had been made afterward, inside the loosened lining. Her thumb struck metal. She slipped out a small brass key stamped Matteo Moretti. The lights died. A hand covered Evelyn's mouth before she could reach the alarm beneath the counter. She drove her heel backward, heard a grunt, and managed to press the program start button on washer 12. Then, a cloth smelling sharply of solvent covered her nose. The last thing she heard was Detective Vance saying, "Take her through the loading door. Leave the suit." At midnight, washer 12 released its lock with a metallic click. Dante stood alone beneath the laundromat's emergency lights, his cleaned suit turned slowly behind the glass. Black fabric tumbling through the last breath of warm air. Evelyn's phone lay broken beside the counter. A chair had been overturned. The back door stood open, and a pale streak of powdered detergent crossed the floor toward the alley. He did not call her name. Men who survived ambushes learned not to give darkness an answer to follow. Instead, he checked the narrow room in order. Restroom, supply closet, upstairs stairwell, rear loading alcove, no body, no blood except a small smear on the metal doorframe. The smear was fresh and came from a split knuckle, not a gunshot. Evelyn had fought. On the counter, he found his watch. She had not taken payment or the emergency number hidden beneath its case. That meant she had been removed before she could choose either. His driver, Nico Vale, entered from the alley with his pistol low. "Counsel started without you. Matteo says your absence confirms guilt. Vehicles? A city sedan left at 11:58. Plates belong to the evidence unit. Real detectives? Vance is real, loyal to whoever pays this month." Dante's jaw tightened. He had spent 6 years making North River predictable. Payments contained, weapons kept away from schools and neighborhood businesses, union contracts honored because chaos attracted federal attention. Matteo called those rules weakness. Now Dante saw how thoroughly his brother had mistaken restraint for blindness. He opened washer 12. The suit smelled of unscented alkaline soap and steam. Evelyn had removed the blood without damaging the wool. She had also turned the jacket inside out before loading it. A section of lining hung open beneath the left arm, its hand stitches cut with professional neatness. "She found something," Dante said. Nico touched the empty seam, and they took it with her. Near the machine, a scoop of blue detergent had spilled across the tile. The trail into the alley was too deliberate to be accidental. Evelyn had pressed her palm into the powder and marked the men who dragged her. Dante followed the faint blue smears to a tire print beside the curb. It was not enough to identify a vehicle, but the powder contained lavender-colored tracer grains Evelyn used only for commercial loads. Under ultraviolet light, those grains would cling to rubber floor mats and shoes for hours. She had left him a way to separate one van from 100. "Get the counsel on speaker," Dante told Nico. His aunt Bianca answered. At 62, Bianca Moretti held no formal title, yet 3 generations had learned that nothing important became family law without her memory attached to it. "You are 12 minutes late," she said. Voices murmured behind her. "Evelyn Hart has been taken from her shop by Vance and at least 2 others. Samuel's blood was planted on my suit." Matteo's voice cut in. "You abandoned counsel for a laundress?" "I abandoned nothing. I am naming the breach. The river captains require a leader before the Belandi convoy reaches Pier 9 at 2. Samuel opposed our response, and now he is missing. Your suit carries his blood. Your woman cleans it. This is not a breach, brother. It is a confession. Evelyn was not Dante's woman." The phrase still landed with a private violence he did not examine. Bianca asked, "Will you appear and answer?" Dante looked at the blue trail disappearing into rain. If he went to counsel, Matteo's men would have almost 2 hours to move Evelyn. If he searched for her, Matteo would claim the family seat and control the North River cruise before the convoy arrived. His power and her life had been placed on opposite sides of the same scale. "Suspend my authority until dawn," Dante said. "Nico will witness it. No retaliation against the unions. No shots fired at Pier 9, and no agreement with Belandi until Samuel is found." The room on the phone erupted. Matteo laughed once. "You surrender command for a shopkeeper you barely know? I surrender nothing to you. I remove your excuse to start a war." Bianca's silence lasted 3 breaths. Temporary suspension recorded. At dawn, the council votes, the line ended. Nico stared at him. "By dawn, Matteo will own half the captains. Then we have 6 hours." They drove first to the city evidence garage, where Nico's cousin worked nights maintaining impounded vehicles. Dante did not ask for records. He asked the cousin to turn off the overhead lights. Under a handheld ultraviolet lamp, One sedan glimmered with lavender grains across the rear floor and passenger threshold. The sedan's official mileage log said it had remained parked all evening. Its engine was warm. In the trunk lay a damp commercial sheet marked with a faded green thread at one corner. Dante photographed it, but did not remove it. Nico recognized the mark. The old Halcyon Industrial Laundry used green corner stitching before it closed 9 years earlier. Matteo had bought the abandoned plant through a holding company, claiming he wanted the riverfront land for storage. Dante remembered mocking the purchase as sentimental. Their father had made both sons work summers at Halcyon before trusting them near the docks. Every employee locker had carried a brass key stamped with a name. He understood what Evelyn must have found in the suit. At 12:41 a.m., they turned toward the abandoned laundry 2 miles upriver. Rain hardened against the windshield. Behind them, an unmarked sedan rolled away from the curb and followed without headlights. Evelyn woke on cold concrete with a chemical ache behind her eyes. Her hands were bound in front with plastic ties. Someone had removed her apron, but the brass key remained tucked inside the folded hem of her wrap blouse. She had hidden it there during the blackout, trusting the fullness of the fabric and the confusion of the struggle. Her right wrist throbbed from the earlier repair work, and the tie pressed harder when she moved. She stopped pulling before swelling made escape impossible. The room smelled of rust, old steam, and mineral detergent. Moonlight filtered through high factory windows. Rows of silent industrial washers stood like enormous black mouths along the walls. Evelyn recognized Halcyon from childhood deliveries with her father, though she had never been inside after it closed. A man breathed unevenly somewhere beyond the nearest machine. "Samuel," she whispered. "Depends who is asking. Evelyn Hart. Dante brought me a suit with your blood on it." Samuel Rusk shifted into view. He was in his late 50s, broad-shouldered despite the ropes around his chest, with a bandage darkening above his left hip. He was pale but alert. The wound had been dressed well enough to keep him alive. "Then he found the key," Samuel said. "I found it." "Why was Matteo's name inside Dante's jacket?" Samuel closed his eyes briefly. "Because I put it there. Matteo had me brought here after I refused to approve Belandi control of Pier 9. He wants the family council to believe Dante killed me. Then use the panic to open North River before 2 in the morning. When his men pressed that suit into my wound, I slipped the key beneath the lining. Why carry his locker key? I stole it from his desk yesterday. His old locker holds the handwritten route book. He would not trust to a phone. Names, payments, times enough to show. He promised Belandi passage before any vote. Footsteps approached. Evelyn lowered her head and let her body sag. Detective Vance entered with Matteo's lieutenant, Carlo Bassi. Carlo was compact, expensively dressed, and irritated by the dirty floor. Vance carried Evelyn's apron in a plastic bag. "Where is it?" Carlo asked. Evelyn blinked slowly. "Where is what?" He crouched in front of her. "The key Samuel put in the suit. If you knew it was there, why didn't you take it before giving Dante the jacket?" Carlo's expression hardened. The answer arrived without words. Matteo had not known until the clean jacket revealed the opened seam. Someone at Hart's Laundry had reported it. Evelyn thought of Leo Marsh, her evening delivery driver. Leo knew the security blind spots, the machine schedule, and the code to the rear door. He also had a younger sister whose medical debts had recently disappeared. The possibility hurt, but she refused to turn suspicion into certainty. Carlo gripped her tired wrist. Pain flashed to her elbow. "You have until 1:30, he said. "Then Mr. Rusk bleeds into another suit, and this time the police find you wearing it." After they left, Evelyn studied the machines. Halcyon's old washers used external steam valves and manual emergency releases. Her father had warned her never to stand between a locked industrial door and pressure. The nearest unit's handle was within reach, but opening it would accomplish nothing. The plastic tie around her wrists was thick. The metal edge beneath the machine was rough enough to cut it, if she could move without worsening Samuel's wound. "Can you walk?" she asked. "For a minute, maybe 2. "Then we do not waste either." She rolled onto one hip, braced her shoes against the concrete, and worked the tie against the metal flange. Each pass burned her wrist. Samuel kept watch and told her what Dante had not. Matteo had spent months buying frightened captains, promising them Belandi money and freedom from Dante's restrictions. Samuel had called the Midnight Council to expose the bargain. Carlo intercepted him before he arrived. The tie snapped after 11 minutes. Evelyn freed Samuel with a shard of brittle plastic, then opened the service panel of the nearest washer. She did not understand the plant's electrical system and did not pretend to. What she understood was water, pressure, and chemical feed. The overhead detergent line still held powdered residue. She opened the manual feed gate above the aisle and shook loose a cloud of pale dust, then cracked a steam valve, just enough to fill the floor with white vapor. It was not an escape plan. It was cover for 20 seconds. They reached the locker corridor as an alarm sounded at the loading bay. Through the steam, Evelyn heard gunfire, 2 restrained bursts. Then silence. Samuel leaned heavily against her shoulder. She could carry some of his weight, not all, and her right wrist had begun to swell. Locker 18 stood open. Matteo's route book was gone. Carlo had anticipated the key. At the far end of the corridor, a tall figure emerged through the vapor, white shirt darkened by rain, tattoos visible across his hands. Dan's weapon remained pointed at the floor. His cold expression did not break, but his eyes found Evelyn first. "You took your time," she said. "I had to surrender a family before they would let me come." Dante crossed the corridor in 6 strides and caught Samuel before the older man's knees failed. Nico appeared behind him, keeping his weapon trained on the steam-filled aisle. "Carlo has the route book," Samuel said. "Matteo knows about the key." "Then the book was bait," Dante replied. Evelyn looked at him. "Your brother left the one object that could lead us here because he wanted you away from the council, and because he expected me to find 2 bodies." A shot struck the locker door beside Dante's head. Nico returned fire, forcing the shooter behind a bank of machines. Dante moved Samuel into the shelter of a concrete pillar, then placed himself between Evelyn and the aisle. "Can you run?" he asked her. "Can he?" "No, then neither can we." The answer irritated him because it was correct. Evelyn tore a strip from a clean rag left on a maintenance shelf and pressed it around Samuel's bandage. She could slow the bleeding, but she made no claim to treat the wound. They needed a doctor within minutes. Nico pointed toward a side passage. "Old cart tunnel reaches the river loading shed." Dante remembered it from his childhood summers. "The outer gate will be chained. Not if the fire crew still uses it." The 4 of them moved through the passage, Nico covering the rear. Samuel leaned on Dante while Evelyn held the bandage in place. Her wrist had swollen beneath a red abrasion. Dante saw it and shifted more of Samuel's weight onto himself without comment. At the loading shed, they found the gate unlocked. Evelyn stopped too easy. Headlights snapped on beyond the rain-streaked doors. 3 vehicles blocked the yard. Carlo's voice came through a loudspeaker. "Leave Rusk and the woman. You can still reach council before dawn, Dante. Matteo might even let you keep your name." Dante answered by shooting the nearest floodlight. Darkness swallowed half the yard. Nico led them through a narrow personnel door into an alley beside the river. His car waited 1 block south, but Samuel could not make the distance quickly. Evelyn noticed stacks of wheeled linen cages beneath an awning, each large enough to conceal a crouched person. Halcyon had once used them to move hotel sheets. "Put Samuel in one," she said. "Their men will watch the 4 exits, not the laundry pickup lane." "The plant has been closed 9 years," Nico said. "No pickup is coming. One is already here." She pointed to a delivery truck idling beside the neighboring hospital annex. Its driver was Rosa Delgado's grandson, Miguel, who washed his uniforms at Hart's and often borrowed Evelyn's loading lane when the hospital dock was crowded. Evelyn called him from Nico's phone. She did not mention Mafia names. She said an injured union mediator needed transport, and asked whether Miguel trusted her. He answered by backing the truck into the alley. Samuel left hidden among clean hospital linens. Nico went with him, directing Miguel to a private clinic run by a doctor who owed Dante Moretti an old favor. Dante and Evelyn used the sedan as a decoy, drawing Carlo's vehicles away from the truck. At 1:26 a.m., they crossed beneath the elevated rail line. Evelyn's borrowed phone rang. Leo's name appeared on the screen. She answered before Dante could stop her. "Evie," Leo whispered, breathless. "I saw them take you. I couldn't stop it. I'm at the shop. They smashed everything. Come through the apartment entrance. No one is watching the roof." Dante heard enough to shake his head. "He knows my building," Evelyn said after ending the call. "He knows the delivery schedules. If he saw Vance, then Vance saw him. Leo has worked for me 4 years. Loyalty does not prevent leverage." She thought of Leo's sister and the erased medical debt. Her judgment wavered between what she knew of him and what Carlo's question had implied. "My upstairs office contains paper copies of every commercial route, including the hospital pickup. If they find Miguel's route, Samuel is exposed. Nico can warn him. The clinic address is not on a phone. It is written inside the red account book." Dant turned the sedan toward Mercer Street. "We go together, 3 minutes inside." This was Evelyn's mistake. She mistook familiarity for safety and allowed urgency to silence doubt. The apartment entrance appeared empty. They climbed the rear stairs, entered her office, and found the red account book still locked in the desk. Evelyn exhaled. Then the sprinkler system erupted. Water hammered the windows and floor. The lights flickered. Dant pulled Evelyn behind a filing cabinet as bullets punched through the office door. He returned 2 controlled shots, then forced open the roof access. Leo stood on the roof beneath the rain, hands raised, a bruise across his cheek. Carlo held a pistol behind his ear. "I'm sorry," Leo said. Carlo fired toward Evelyn. Dant turned, covering her with his body. The bullet tore across his left shoulder, spinning him against the brick parapet. Evelyn caught his shirt before he fell. The wound was a deep graze rather than a direct hit, but blood ran quickly down his sleeve. Carlo dragged Leo toward the opposite fire escape. "The clinic. Evelyn, tell me where Rusk is, or your driver goes into the river." She looked at Leo. Then at the red account book under her arm, the clinic location could save 1 man and condemn another. "You will not trade, Samuel," Dante said through clenched teeth. "I know." Evelyn threw the account book over the parapet. Carlo lunged to watch it fall. Leo drove his elbow backward and broke free. Dante fired into the metal stairs, forcing Carlo down and away. Evelyn pulled Leo toward the access door, while rain diluted the blood on Dante's shoulder. Below, the red book landed in a commercial dumpster filled with blue detergent slurry from the ruined shop. Its ink began to dissolve before Carlo could reach it. By 2:05 a.m., the three of them were inside the locked boiler room beneath Hart's laundry. Leo sat on an overturned bucket with ice wrapped against his cheek. Dante had allowed him inside only after searching him, taking his phone, and making him describe every conversation with Carlo. Evelyn cleaned Dante's shoulder with the shop's first aid supplies. The bullet had carved a shallow channel through muscle, but had not remained inside. He could move his arm, though lifting it above chest height made his face go still in a way that betrayed pain more clearly than a cry would have. "You need stitches," she said. "After dawn, your body does not recognize family deadlines. It has learned." She tightened the bandage. His jaw flexed, but he did not pull away. Up close, the tattoos on his chest and shoulder were not decoration. Names and dates threaded through the black and gray patterns, a family history carried on skin. Evelyn wondered how many of those names had taught him that control was safer than trust. Leo stared at the floor. Carlo had paid his sister's hospital balance, then shown him photographs proving men watched her commute. In return, Leo supplied closing times and rear door codes. He swore he had not known Evelyn would be taken. "You knew enough to hide it," Evelyn said. "I thought I could give them harmless things until Mia finished treatment. There are no harmless details when someone is building a trap." The words hurt him. They also hurt her because they applied to her decision to answer his call. Dante asked only practical questions. Carlo had ordered Leo to report if Evelyn opened the jacket lining. Leo saw the brass key in her hand through the office camera feed and sent a single coded message. That explained how Matteo learned the key had been found. Leo also heard Carlo mention a transfer seal kept in Matteo's halcyon locker and a Belandi convoy waiting beyond the river. "The route book may be gone," Samuel said over Nico's phone from the clinic. "But the seal matters more. Belandi cannot claim protected passage without the Moretti iron seal on their cargo papers. Matteo needs council authority or the physical seal before 2:30. It was now 2:18. Evelyn removed the brass key from her blouse hem and placed it on the boiler room workbench. Carlo searched the locker before we reached it. Would he leave the seal? Not knowingly, Dante said. Then why demand the key after taking the book? Leo looked up. Because Carlo never opened the locker, he told Vance they couldn't find Matteo's duplicate. Evelyn pictured locker 18 standing open. Its door had swung loosely, but the interior was dark and empty. In old industrial laundries, employee lockers sometimes had a secondary compartment for chemicals or valuables, separated by a false shelf so spills could not reach them. Her father had once kept payroll cash in one. "The locker has 2 locks," she said. "The name key opens the inner compartment." Carlo removed the book from the outer section and assumed that was all. Dante's gaze settled on the key. "Then Matteo still needs it, and he thinks I have it." Outside, engines moved along Mercer Street. Matteo's patrols were tightening around the neighborhood. The Belandi convoy had not crossed Pier 9 because Bianca enforced Dante's temporary order. But the delay would last only until the dawn vote. If Matteo presented the seal and claimed Dante had fled with Samuel's killer, uncertain captains might accept the bargain to prevent war. Dante told Nico to keep Samuel at the clinic and send Bianca one message. Samuel lived but no location. He then asked Leo whether Carlo had mentioned the council venue. Moretti Hall at 5, Leo said. Matteo wants every captain there before sunrise. Dante reached for the key with his uninjured hand. Evelyn closed her fingers over it first. "You ordered me to destroy the suit," she said. "If I had obeyed, Samuel's warning would be gone. I know you knew keeping it put me in danger, so you made the decision for me." His cold expression held, but shame darkened his eyes. "My father survived by removing choices before enemies could use them. I believed that was protection tonight. It gave Matteo the exact panic he needed. Protection without truth is another locked door. Then I will not lock this one." He withdrew his hand. "You decide whether the key goes back." Attraction had been present from the first time he returned her protection payment. A dangerous current beneath irritation. Trust was different. It arrived now in the space he gave her, though every instinct in him wanted control. Evelyn considered her damaged shop above them, Samuel's wound, Leo's fear, and the ordinary customers who would wake to armed men on Mercer Street if Matteo won. "We retrieve the seal," she said, "but we do it my way. No raid. Halcyon's machines still connect to the hospital linen lane. We enter inside a delivery cage, the same way Samuel escaped." Dante almost objected. Then he nodded. Leo knew Miguel's truck route. He could arrange the empty return cage and remain outside as lookout. Evelyn would guide Dante to the locker corridor. His shoulder made close combat dangerous, so Nico would send one trusted guard after securing Samuel. The plan was simple enough to work and fragile enough to fail. Before they left, Dante stopped beside the ruined main floor. Broken glass covered the tile. Washer 12 stood intact, its circular door reflecting them together. "When this ends," he said, "I will repair what my family brought here. Repair is not repayment." "What is?" Evelyn met his gaze in the dark glass, changing what makes the damage repeat. At 2:34 a.m., they climbed into an empty linen cage behind Miguel's hospital truck and returned to Halcyon with Matteo's key between them. The hospital truck entered Halcyon's service lane at 2:51 a.m. Evelyn, and Dante crouched beneath folded canvas inside the return cage. The tight space forced his wounded shoulder against her arm. Each time the truck crossed broken pavement, his breath shortened. He refused pain medicine because he needed a clear head, a choice Evelyn disliked but understood, through a gap in the canvas. She counted 2 guards at the loading door and 1 on the overhead walk. Matteo expected an attack from the riverside, not a legitimate linen vehicle whose driver had passed the same gate every night for 6 years. Miguel rolled the cage into the sorting room and left without looking back. That restraint was his contribution. Courage did not always announce itself. Evelyn waited until the loading door closed, then led Dante through the silent wash aisle. The steam she had released earlier had settled into dampness on the floor. Locker 18 remained open. The brass key fit a small slot behind the upper shelf. A metal panel dropped 2 inches, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside lay an iron seal engraved with the Moretti crest and 3 folded cargo permits bearing blank signature lines. No route book, no stack of money. One object and its intended use, exactly as Samuel described. Dante wrapped the seal in a clean cloth and placed it inside his shirt, where his uninjured right hand could reach it. Evelyn photographed the open compartment with Leo's replacement phone, including the stamped locker number and key in the same frame. The image could show location and access. But they both knew a photograph alone proved little. "We have what Matteo needs," she whispered. "Now we leave." A voice answered from the doorway. "You have what Matteo allowed you to find." Carlo stood with Detective Vance and 4 armed men. Leo was beside them, wrists bound. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Leo had followed instructions and remained outside. But Carlo had anticipated the hospital truck after discovering the blue detergent in the ruined account book. Her plan had relied on a route. Matteo's men already knew. She had treated local knowledge as exclusive when it was merely familiar. Carlo smiled at her realization. The seal is real. The permits are not. Mr. Moretti only needs witnesses to say Dante stole the family seal while conspiring with Rusk. Thank you for providing both. Dante moved half a step in front of Evelyn. Put the seal on the bench, Vance ordered. You are wearing a city badge inside a kidnapping site, Evelyn said. How many versions of tonight do you expect people to believe? Only the one told by whoever controls Dawn. Dante placed the wrapped seal on the bench. His expression remained stern and unreadable, but Evelyn saw his right fingers open twice against his thigh. A signal, perhaps, though she did not know it. Carlo reached for the cloth. The overhead lights went out. This darkness belonged to Dante. Nico's trusted guard had cut the local breaker from the exterior panel. Dante drove his shoulder into Vance before the detective could fire, using his right side and keeping the injured left arm tight. Evelyn dropped behind the locker bank. Shots cracked through the corridor. Metal rang. Leo threw himself flat. Evelyn could not see the seal, but she heard cloth slide across the bench. A man cursed. Emergency lamps glowed red a moment later. Carlo was gone. So was the seal. Vance lay unconscious. 2 guards had fled. One was wounded, and Nico's man held the 4th at gunpoint. Dante leaned against the lockers, blood spreading through his shoulder bandage. He had prevented Vance from shooting Evelyn, but the collision reopened the wound. They had entered with leverage and lost it. Worse, Leo had heard Carlo speak to Matteo before the ambush. Samuel's clinic location had been discovered from Muggle's truck license. Men were already moving toward it. Dante ordered Nico to evacuate Samuel, but the call went unanswered. Matteo has him, Dante said. At 3:12 a.m., Matteo called from Samuel's phone. Bring yourself to Pier 9 at 4, he told Dante. Come with Evelyn and no army. You will surrender your claim before the captains, and she will confirm you forced her to clean Rusk's blood. In return, Samuel and Leo's sister live. Evelyn looked at Leo. He went white at the mention of Mia. Matteo continued. If you refuse, Belandi crosses with our seal. If you attack, the mediator dies and North River blames you. If you run, council names you coward at dawn. I have finally left you no clean choice. Dante ended the call without answering. For the first time that night, his control looked less like strength than a wall beginning to crack. He had lost command, the seal, Samuel, and the protection of the rules he built. His brother had designed every option to make violence profitable. Evelyn took his right hand. The tattoos across his fingers disappeared beneath hers. He left one clean choice, she said. Which one? We stop protecting your position and protect the neighborhood. If Pier 9 becomes useless to Belandi, Matteo has nothing to sell. Destroying the pier would hurt the Union more than him. I did not say destroy it. Hart's handles uniforms for every night crew on the river. Their garment tags tell me which workers were reassigned this week and where. Matteo moved his own men into Union jackets. We can identify them before the convoy arrives, Dante understood. Evelyn's records would not defeat Matteo, but they could separate legitimate crews from infiltrators and deny him the confusion he needed. The records dissolved in the dumpster, Leo said. The Red Book did, Evelyn replied. The tags did not. Every returned uniform in my shop still carries its root thread. Above them, dawn remained hours away. At Hart's Laundry, hundreds of ordinary garments waited in wheeled bins, each holding a small piece of the truth. They reached Hart's Laundry at 3:25 a.m. through the boiler room entrance. Rain tapped the boarded front windows. Upstairs, water from the sprinklers dripped through the ceiling, but the commercial bins on the main floor remained dry. Evelyn worked while Nico's guard stitched Dante's shoulder under a battery lamp. The guard had trained as a combat medic before joining the Moretti family. He cleaned and closed the wound, then bound Dante's left arm close enough to discourage movement. Dante accepted the restriction because Evelyn stood over him until he did. She sorted the river uniforms by touch and colored thread. Hart's used blue stitching for Pier 9, yellow for the ferry warehouses, and red for union supervisors. Each garment also carried a small repair mark recording its last service. 12 Pier 9 jackets had appeared in the bins without Hart's marks. Their size labels had been removed, and the cuffs carried Halcyon's old green thread. Matteo dressed his men as dock workers, Evelyn said. The false photograph used my clothes the same way. He keeps turning uniforms into witnesses that cannot speak. Then we make them speak, Leo replied. Evelyn called Ruth Delaney, the Pier 9 night forewoman and a customer since Hart's opened. Ruth did not ask why a Mafia boss was in the shop. She listened as Evelyn described the genuine cuff repairs and the counterfeit jackets. At 3:55, Ruth said, every legitimate worker can turn out a cuff. Anyone who refuses does not touch the gate controls. That would expose infiltrators, not stop armed men. Dante sent Nico one instruction. Bring Vance alive to Pier 9 and notify Bianca that Samuel was being held there. He did not ask Bianca to rescue him. He asked the council to witness what Matteo did with the power he claimed. Leo volunteered to contact his sister. Her phone answered, but Carlo spoke. Mia was already at the pier. I brought this to both of you, Leo said. Carlo brought it, Evelyn answered. You opened the door. What you do next decides whether it stays open. Leo chose to go with Ruth's workers and identify the men who had used his delivery code. It would not erase his betrayal. It would give it a consequence other than shame. At 3:39, Evelyn changed into a dry burgundy blouse and dark trousers from her upstairs apartment. Dante put on the cleaned black suit from washer 12, leaving the jacket open so it would not pull against his shoulder. The blood was gone, but the loosened lining and false bullet hole remained. Evelyn had preserved the damage because a cleaner's work was sometimes knowing what not to erase. Before leaving, Dante offered her his watch again. Bianca's number, if I fall. She will honor a request made through it. What request? Protection for you, Leo, Samuel, and the shop. And if you do not fall, then I will ask what protection means to you before offering it. He had finally learned the distinction. Evelyn closed the watch around her left wrist. They had known each other through 4 meetings and 1 impossible night. Desire existed between them, sharp and undeniable. But it was his willingness to surrender command over her choices that made Evelyn step closer. She touched her forehead to his for one quiet breath. "Do not mistake that for forgiveness," she said. "I would not survive the mistake." At 3:46 a.m., they drove toward Pier 9 without an army. Dante carried no weapon in his left hand and kept his right visible. Evelyn brought the cleaned suit, the brass key, and her knowledge of every uniform waiting at the river. Pier 9 rose from the rain like a steel island. Cranes stood motionless above stacked containers, and the Belandi convoy waited beyond the eastern gate. 6 trucks with darkened cabs and no company markings. Matteo had arranged the exchange beneath the loading canopy. Samuel sat tied to a chair, pale but conscious. Maya Marsh stood beside him with Carlo's hand locked around her arm. Captains from both families formed a guarded semicircle. Bianca and 4 Moretti elders watched from the covered loading office exactly where Dante had asked them to witness. Matteo wore a charcoal suit and Dante's family seal on a chain around his neck. He looked enough like his brother to make the differences crueler, where Dante's stillness contained feeling. Matteo's smile concealed appetite. The laundress arrives in the victim's clothes. Matteo announced when he saw the cleaned suit. "How considerate." Evelyn laid it across a steel table. Samuel's blood dried before someone cut the bullet hole. The lining was opened from the inside, where he hid your key. A cleaner's opinion. A fact anyone here can touch. Samuel raised his head. "I put the key there after Carlo pressed the jacket into my wound." Matteo ordered it. Murmurs moved among the captains. Matteo did not turn. A wounded man will say anything for release. Dante abducted him and coached the story. At 3:55, a whistle sounded along the pier. Every legitimate dock worker turned one cuff inside out. Blue and red repair threads flashed beneath the canopy. 12 men remained still. Ruth's supervisors stepped away from them and locked the gate control booth. Leo identified 2 as the men who had taken Evelyn through her loading door. Matteo's smile vanished. "Your soldiers are wearing dead workers' jackets," Evelyn said. The names were removed, but Hart's repair marks remain on the genuine uniforms. "You plan to let Belandi cross during a fight started by men disguised as Union crews." The infiltrators reached for weapons. Dante's captains moved first, not firing, but surrounding them with guns drawn. For one suspended moment, the balance shifted. Then Carlo pulled Mia against him and pressed his pistol beneath her jaw. Matteo seized Samuel's chair and dragged it toward the eastern gate. "Open the booth," Matteo ordered Ruth, "or both hostages die." Dante stepped forward. "Take my claim instead. I renounce North River and the family seat. Release them, and the council can choose any leader but me." It was not theater. Bianca's face confirmed that the words spoken before the captains could not be withdrawn. Matteo had spent years wanting Dante's place. Now it was offered without blood, and still he hesitated. Evelyn understood why. The seat had never been his full objective. Belandi's payment and unrestricted passage were. Without the crossing, he could not satisfy the men he had bought. "You see," she said to the council, "he does not want leadership unless it comes with the convoy." Matteo struck Samuel across the face. "Open the gate." Ruth refused. Carlo fired into the air. Workers scattered behind barriers. In the confusion, Matteo's men grabbed Evelyn and pulled her into the uniform wash office beside the gate controls. Dante tried to follow, but Carlo shot the floor beside Samuel and forced him back. The office door slammed. Matteo shoved Evelyn against a utility sink and took Dante's watch from her wrist. "You turned laundry into a rebellion," he said. You did that when you used honest people's clothes to hide your men." Through the window, the first Belandi truck rolled toward the locked gate. Matteo drew a knife and cut the fire hose feeding the wash station. Water burst across the floor, driving workers away from the booth entrance. He had created chaos again, confident that only he knew how to profit from it. Evelyn looked at the wet uniforms hanging above the sink, the floor drain beneath Matteo's shoes, and the heavy manual lever controlling the wash office's rolling service door. Then she saw Carlo's route book protruding from the inner pocket of Matteo's discarded raincoat. Evelyn did not reach for the book. Matteo was watching her hands. Instead, she grabbed the hanging uniforms and pulled them into the stream from the severed hose. Saturated canvas dropped across the floor between them. Matteo stepped back to keep his footing. Evelyn used both hands to drive the manual service door lever downward. The rolling door rose halfway with a violent rattle. Ruth's workers outside hooked the wet uniforms with cargo poles and dragged them through the opening, tangling two of Matteo's guards. Evelyn dropped low and slid the raincoat beneath the door with her foot. Leo caught it on the other side. Matteo seized her hair before she could follow. He pulled her upright and put the knife against her throat. Dante stood 10 feet away, his injured arm bound beneath the cleaned suit. His stern face remained controlled, but murder lived in the stillness of his eyes. "Give me the coat," Matteo told Leo. Leo removed the route book and passed it to Bianca instead. Inside were departure times, payments from Belandi, names of purchased captains, and the instruction to stage Samuel's murder before the Midnight Council. Samuel identified Matteo's handwriting. Bianca compared the entries with cargo permits already stamped by the iron seal hanging from Matteo's neck. Detective Vance arrived in Nico's custody at the edge of the canopy. Faced with the route book and Carlo, Vance admitted he had supplied the false photograph and city sedan. His confession did not cleanse him, but it closed Matteo's last escape from the facts. Carlo looked from the council to Matteo. "You said Rusk would live after the vote." "And you believed me," Matteo said. He shifted the knife away from Evelyn just long enough to shoot Carlo in the abdomen with his free hand. The act answered every captain, still considering loyalty. Nico pulled Mia to safety, while Ruth's crew rolled Samuel behind a steel barrier. Evelyn drove her heel onto the wet raincoat beneath Matteo's shoe. The fabric slid. His balance broke, and the knife left her throat. She did not overpower him. She used the instant to twist away and fall behind the sink. Dante crossed the distance. His right fist struck Matteo once, hard enough to drop the pistol. The brothers crashed against the gate controls. Dante's wounded shoulder failed when he tried to restrain Matteo, and Matteo reached for the gun. Evelyn kicked it beneath the rolling door. Leo trapped it under a cargo pole. Matteo drew a second blade from his ankle. Dante could have retreated. Instead, he caught his brother's wrist with both hands, reopening his stitches to keep the blade away from Evelyn. Blood spread beneath his jacket. Bianca's voice cut through the struggle. "Matteo Moretti, stand down. The council withdraws your name, your crews, and family protection." Matteo laughed breathlessly. "Dante already renounced his claim. You have no leader. Then we will endure the inconvenience." Moretti captains closed around him. Matteo released the knife only when Carlo, bleeding but conscious, ordered his own men to lower their weapons. The Belandi trucks reversed from the eastern gate. Their commanders had paid for passage, not a war witnessed by every North River crew. at 4:23 a.m. The iron seal was removed from Matteo's neck and placed in Bianca's custody beside the root book and brass key. Samuel was alive. Mia was free. Vance and Carlo would answer to different kinds of justice, neither of them gentle. Dante swayed as the fight left his body. Evelyn reached him before he fell. "You gave up the family seat," she said, pressing cloth to his shoulder. "It was the only thing. Matteo could not believe I would sacrifice. Do you regret it?" His gaze moved across the pier, where union workers were removing counterfeit jackets from Matteo's men. "I regret needing this night to learn what power was for." The first gray light appeared over North River as the clinic car carried Dante away. Evelyn rode beside him, one hand holding pressure against his wound and the other still smelling faintly of clean soap. Matteo's bargain collapsed before sunrise. Without the seal or union cooperation, Belandi withdrew. Bianca placed North River under a temporary council of 3 captains and Samuel Rusk, ending the single-boss rule. Dante kept his renunciation. He spent 4 days in the clinic, while the wound in his shoulder was repaired properly. He could walk, argue, and sign statements. But he wore a sling and was forbidden to lift anything heavier than a dinner plate. Evelyn visited once each day. She did not reward his sacrifice by pretending the damage had vanished. They spoke about Leo's betrayal, the weapons brought near her customers, and Dante's habit of replacing trust with commands. Leo accepted charges for giving Carlo access to the shop. Evelyn testified that he had later risked himself to save Mia and recover the root book, but she did not ask anyone to erase his choice. He would not return as her driver. Their friendship, if it survived, would have to become something new. Vance entered state custody. Carlo survived and helped dismantle Matteo's purchased cruise. Matteo was sent into permanent exile under a blood oath recognized by both families. Killing him would have started the war he wanted. Hart's Laundry reopened 3 weeks later. The windows were replaced, the rear door light restored, and washer 12 fitted with a new lock. Dante paid for the damage, but Evelyn chose every contractor. He did not purchase the building or put his name on the door. 2 unarmed watchers remained outside during the trial, only because she agreed. On the first night after reopening, customers filled the shop. Rosa brought sweet bread. Michael returned the hospital linens. Ruth hung a strip of blue cuff thread beside the counter. Meaningless to strangers but unforgettable at Pier 9. Dante arrived at 10:40, wearing a midnight blue suit and no overcoat. His left arm moved carefully, and the black and gray tattoos across his neck and right hand remained visible. He carried a paper bag from the diner rather than a weapon or an order. Conversation quieted. Evelyn looked up from the register. "You are blocking the door," she said. He stepped aside. An old habit. "And the bag, dinner. 2 sandwiches because I was told. Arriving with diamonds would get me thrown into the street." Rosa examined the ceiling with suspicious innocence. Evelyn came around the counter. Her chestnut hair was tied in the loose high knot he remembered, and a deep green wrap dress followed her full bust, soft waist, broad hips, and thick thighs without apology. Danton's gaze warmed, though his expression remained restrained. "What exactly are you asking for?" she said. "1 meal after closing. No guards inside. No decisions made for you. No secrets justified as protection." That sounds rehearsed. Bianca rejected the first 6 versions. Evelyn smiled despite herself. "1 meal is not a promise. I am finished demanding promises before earning them." That answer mattered more than the dinner. She let him help fold clean towels with one hand while the final machines completed their cycles. He was bad at it. The first towel emerged narrow on one end and thick on the other. Evelyn unfolded it and showed him again. At 11, she locked the front door. The laundromat settled into its familiar rhythm. Water turning, dryers humming, pipes warming the old brick walls. Dante placed his cleaned black suit from that night on the counter. The false bullet hole remained inside the lining. "I thought you would discard it," Evelyn said. "It reminds me what happened when I tried to destroy the truth." She touched the repaired seam. "Some marks should remain visible." He nodded. There was no public declaration, no family contract, and no instant absolution. Only a dangerous man sitting beneath fluorescent lights, allowing an ordinary place to set the rules, and a woman deciding freely that he could stay until the dryers stopped. When Dante reached for her, he paused before touching her hand. Evelyn closed the distance herself. Outside, North River moved toward morning without gunfire. Inside Hart's laundry, washer 12 clicked open, and neither of them mistook the sound for a locked door again.